Danny Miller wiped the sweat from his forehead as he looked across the Luna Station salvage yard. The old mechanic had been working here for almost 30 years now, and he knew every twisted piece of metal in this place. The salvage yard stretched out under the dome that protected it from space, filled with broken ships, burnt engines, and all sorts of space junk that nobody wanted anymore. Most people who worked here just saw garbage, but Danny saw stories. Every dented hull told him about some adventure gone wrong. Every burnt engine spoke of someone's dream to reach the stars. He treated each piece with respect, even when others laughed at him for caring about old scrap metal. In the far corner of the yard sat something different. It had been there for 15 years, ever since the deep space salvage crew brought it in. The ship was not like anything humans had ever built. It was smooth and curved, almost like it had grown instead of being constructed. The metal seemed to shift color depending on how the light hit it. Sometimes silver, sometimes blue, sometimes almost gold. Everyone called it the alien wreck, though nobody really knew what it was or where it came from. The scientists had tried everything to figure it out. They had scanned it with every machine they had. They had taken samples from the hull. They had tried to cut into it with plasma torches. Nothing worked. The ship just sat there, silent and dead, taking up valuable space in the yard. Jake Morrison, the yard supervisor, wanted to break it down for parts years ago. He was a big man with a loud voice who always complained about wasted space and lost profits. But Dr. Lisa Cooper from the research division kept stopping him. She was convinced the ship held secrets that could change everything for humanity. So there it sat, gathering dust while scientists argued about what to do with it. Danny first noticed the ship on his second week working in the yard. Something about it called to him. While everyone else saw it as a problem or a puzzle to solve, Danny saw something sad and lonely. The ship reminded him of an old dog he once knew, sitting quietly in a corner, waiting for someone to show it kindness. During his lunch breaks, Danny started sitting near the ship. At first, he just ate his sandwich and watched it. The ship never moved or made any sound, but Danny felt like it was aware of him somehow. After a few weeks, he started bringing a cloth and some cleaning solution with him. The other workers thought he had lost his mind. Jake Morrison would walk by and shake his head, muttering about crazy old men and their hobbies. The younger techs would point and laugh when they saw Danny carefully wiping down sections of the hull. They called it his pet project and made jokes about the old man who talked to dead ships. Dr. Cooper was more polite, but Danny could see she thought he was wasting his time too. She would watch him work sometimes, her arms crossed and her face showing that mix of pity and confusion that's smart people get when they see someone doing something they think is pointless. She never said anything mean, but Danny could tell she saw his cleaning as just janitor work on a piece of space junk. But Danny kept going anyway. Every day during lunch, he would sit beside the ship and clean another section. He worked slowly and carefully, taking his time to remove years of dust and grime that had built up on the hull. The ship was beautiful under all that dirt. The metal was smooth as glass, and when clean, it seemed to glow with its own inner light. While he worked, Danny talked to the ship. He told it about his day, about the other ships in the yard, about his life. He talked about his wife Helen, who had died 3 years ago from cancer. He told the ship how much he missed her laugh and the way she used to hum while cooking dinner. He talked about his dreams of becoming a deep space engineer when he was young, and how life had taken him in a different direction instead. The ship never answered, of course, but Danny felt better talking to it anyway. It was a good listener, and it never judged him or made him feel foolish for being an old mechanic with simple dreams. As the weeks passed, Danny started noticing things about the ship that others had missed. The hull was not just smooth metal. There were tiny patterns in it, so small you could only see them when the light hit just right. Some sections seemed to respond to his touch, growing slightly warmer when he placed his hand on them. The ship never accumulated the same kind of corrosion that covered other wrecks in the yard, as if it somehow protected itself from decay. Danny also noticed that the ship seemed to have moods. On sunny days when the light came through the dome at just the right angle, the hull would shimmer like water. On darker days, it would seem more subdued, almost gray. Sometimes Danny could swear the color shifted while he was watching, but whenever he called someone over to look, the ship would be perfectly still and normal again. The other workers thought these observations were just the imagination of a lonely old man. Jake Morrison told everyone that Danny was getting senile and seeing things that were not there. Even Dr. Cooper smiled and nodded politely when Danny tried to explain what he had noticed, but he could tell she did not believe him. None of that mattered to Danny, though. He had spent his whole life working with machines, and he knew when something was special. This ship was not just a piece of alien technology. It was something more, something that deserved respect and care instead of being poked and prodded like a lab specimen. Every day Danny would arrive at work early, do his regular maintenance duties around the yard, then spend his lunch hour with the ship. He brought different cleaning supplies to try, always gentle ones that would not damage the hull. He learned which sections cleaned easily and which ones needed more patience. He memorized every curve and line of the ship's surface until he could have drawn it from memory. The ship became the bright spot in Danny's day. Working in the salvage yard could be depressing, surrounded by broken dreams and failed missions. But sitting beside the alien ship, cleaning it carefully and talking to it like an old friend, made Danny feel useful and peaceful. He felt like he was doing something important, even if nobody else understood what that was. Months passed this way. The ship stayed silent and still, but Danny never gave up on it. He had learned patience from years of working with stubborn machines, and he knew that some things just took time. Besides, even if the ship never responded, even if it really was just a dead hulk like everyone said, Danny felt good about treating it with dignity and respect. He had no way of knowing that his simple acts of kindness were about to change everything for humanity. He just kept cleaning, kept talking, and kept believing that every living thing, even alien ships, deserved to be cared for properly. That belief was about to be tested in ways Danny could never have imagined. 3 months had passed since Danny started his daily cleaning routine with the alien ship. The hull now gleamed like polished silver in most places, free from the years of dust and grime that had covered it when he first began. Danny took pride in his work, even though the other workers still thought he was wasting his time on a dead piece of space junk. On this particular Tuesday morning, Danny was working on a section near what he thought might be the front of the ship. The area was covered in intricate patterns that were so fine they looked almost like writing. Danny had to use a soft brush and work very slowly to clean between all the tiny grooves without damaging anything. As he finished the last few inches of the section, something happened that made Danny drop his cleaning cloth in surprise. A soft humming sound came from somewhere inside the ship. It was very quiet, barely louder than a whisper, but after months of complete silence, it sounded as loud as thunder to Danny's ears. Danny pressed his ear against the hull where the sound seemed to be coming from. He could feel a gentle vibration. Through the metal, rhythmic and steady like a heartbeat. His own heart started beating faster with excitement. The ship was not dead after all. Something inside was alive and responding to his care. He ran across the yard as fast as his old legs could carry him, calling for Dr. Cooper and the other scientists. By the time they arrived with their instruments and scanners, Danny was out, of breath and pointing excitedly at the ship. Dr. Cooper looked skeptical as she set up her equipment. She had heard Danny's theories about the ship before, and while she respected his dedication, she did not really believe that cleaning the hull could bring a dead alien ship back to life. Jake Morrison was there too, shaking his head and muttering about interruptions to the workday. The scientists ran every test they could think of. They checked for energy readings, scanned for life signs, and monitored every frequency their machines could detect. After an hour of careful examination, they found nothing unusual. The ship showed the same readings it had shown for 15 years, completely inert and lifeless. Dr. Cooper tried to be kind when she delivered the disappointing news to Danny. She explained that sometimes old metal could make settling noises, especially when temperature changes caused expansion and contraction. She suggested that what Danny heard was probably just normal material stress, not any kind of alien technology coming to life. Jake Morrison was less diplomatic. He told Danny that he was hearing things and wasting everyone's time with his fantasies about talking to dead ships. Some of the younger workers snickered and made jokes about the old man who thought he could wake up aliens by giving them a bath. Danny felt embarrassed and confused. He knew what he had heard, and he knew what he had felt. The vibration through the hull had been real as anything he had ever experienced. But with all the scientific instruments showing nothing, he started to doubt himself. Maybe he really was just a lonely old man imagining things. But Danny was not the type to give up easily. He had been working with machines his whole life, and he trusted his instincts about how they behaved. Something had changed in the ship, even if the instruments could not detect it. He decided to keep watching and listening more carefully. The next day, Danny returned to his usual spot beside the ship during lunch. He brought his cleaning supplies as always, but this time he also brought a small notebook to write down anything unusual he noticed. If something was happening to the ship, he wanted to have a record of it. As he started cleaning a new section, Danny noticed something strange. The area he had cleaned the day before, where he first heard the humming, seemed to be glowing very faintly. The glow was so subtle that he almost missed it, visible only when he looked at it from just the right angle. Danny made a note in his book and kept working. Over the next few days, the changes became more obvious, but only to Danny. Sections of the hull that he had cleaned thoroughly began to show patterns of light that pulsed slowly like a sleeping creature breathing. The ship felt warmer to the touch in some places, cooler in others. Sometimes Danny could swear he heard very faint sounds coming from inside, like machinery starting up after a long sleep. But every time Danny called the scientists to come look, the ship would return to its normal appearance before they arrived. Dr. Cooper began to look at him with concern, worried that the stress of losing his wife and working alone so much was affecting his mental health. Jake Morrison stopped being polite about it and started talking openly about having Danny examined by the station's medical staff. Danny realized that the ship was only showing itself to him. For some reason it trusted him, but not the others. This made sense to Danny in a way that surprised him. If he were an alien ship waking up after years of being poked and prodded by strangers, he would probably be cautious about who he revealed himself to as well. So Danny stopped calling the others when something happened. Instead, he started paying closer attention to the ship's behavior and trying to understand what it might be trying to communicate. He noticed that the patterns of light seemed to respond to his voice. When he talked softly and calmly, the lights pulsed slowly and gently. When he was excited or upset, they flickered more rapidly. One evening, Danny was working late in the salvage yard. Most of the other workers had gone home, and the artificial lighting cast long shadows between the piles of scrap metal. Danny often stayed late because he found the quiet peaceful, and because he could spend more time with the ship without being watched and judged by others. As he cleaned a particularly stubborn spot on the hull, Danny found himself talking about Helen again. He told the ship how much he missed her, how empty his small apartment felt without her there. He talked about how he had always dreamed of exploring space with her, of seeing the wonders of the galaxy together. Now that she was gone, he felt like his chance for adventure had passed him by. As Danny spoke, something amazing happened. A large section of the hull began to glow with soft, beautiful patterns of light. The lights moved and shifted like living things, pulsing in rhythm with Danny's heartbeat. It was the most beautiful thing Danny had ever seen, like looking at a living aurora that responded to his emotions. Danny reached out and touched the glowing section with trembling fingers. The metal felt warm and alive under his hand, and for just a moment he could swear he felt something reaching back, some gentle presence acknowledging his touch. Tears came to his eyes as he realized that after months of one-sided conversation, something was finally answering him. The ship had been listening all along. It had been learning about him, understanding him, deciding whether to trust him. Danny felt honored and humbled that this ancient, mysterious being had chosen to reveal itself to him, a simple mechanic who had shown it nothing more than basic kindness and respect. That night, Danny sat beside the ship until very late, watching the patterns of light dance across its hull. He felt less lonely than he had in years. Whatever this ship was, wherever it had come from, it was alive and aware and had chosen him as its friend. Danny promised the ship that he would protect it from those who would harm it, and that he would never stop caring for it, no matter what anyone else said. Over the following weeks, the ship's responses to Danny became stronger and more frequent. What had started as faint glowing patterns was now clear communication, though only Danny could see it. The lights would dance across the hull when he arrived each morning, almost as if the ship was greeting him. When he left at the end of the day, the patterns would fade to a soft, steady glow that looked almost sad. Danny started keeping detailed notes in his notebook about everything he observed. He drew sketches of the light patterns and tried to figure out if they meant something specific. Some patterns appeared when he talked about happy memories with Helen. Others showed up when he discussed his work or his dreams. The ship seemed to be learning about human emotions and responding to them. The most interesting discovery came when Danny realized that the ship was also trying to show him things. Sometimes the lights would form shapes that looked almost like pictures. Danny saw what might have been stars or planets or strange creatures he could not identify. The images were always unclear, like trying to see through thick fog, but Danny was certain the ship was trying to share its own memories with him. One morning, Danny was cleaning a new section of the hull when he accidentally cut his hand on a sharp piece of debris that had been stuck to the ship's surface. Blood welled up from the small wound, and a few drops fell onto the clean metal below. Danny was reaching for his first aid kit when something incredible happened. The moment his blood touched the ship's hull, the entire vessel blazed with light. Not just the soft, glowing patterns Danny had grown used to, but brilliant, pulsing illumination that lit up the entire salvage yard. Danny stumbled backward in surprise, shielding his eyes from the sudden brightness. All around the ship, systems that had been silent for 15 years suddenly roared to life. Deep humming sounds came from within the hull as massive engines powered up. The ship rose several inches off the ground, hovering on some kind of invisible force field. Panels that had looked like solid metal suddenly became transparent, revealing complex machinery and flowing energy patterns inside. But the most amazing thing was not the lights or the sounds, or even the fact that the ship was floating. The most amazing thing was the voice that suddenly filled Danny's mind, speaking to him without words, communicating directly with his thoughts. The voice was gentle and warm, unmistakably female, with a quality that reminded Danny of wind chimes or flowing water. She did not speak in English or any human language, but somehow Danny understood every word perfectly. She told him her name was Aria, and she had been waiting for someone like him for a very long time. Through the mental connection, Aria shared her story with Danny in a rush of images and emotions that took his breath away. She showed him visions of vast space, filled with wonders beyond imagination. He saw ancient civilizations that had built cities among the stars, races of beings so advanced they seemed like gods, and technologies that could reshape entire worlds. Arya had been the companion of one of these advanced beings, a member of an ancient race called the Keepers. Her partner had been an explorer and teacher, traveling the galaxy to help younger civilizations learn and grow. Arya was not just a ship, but a living being herself, created through a combination of advanced technology and something that humans might call magic. But tragedy had struck during one of their missions. Arya's partner had been killed in an accident, on a distant world, leaving her alone and heartbroken. Without her companion, Arya had lost her sense of purpose. She had wandered the galaxy for centuries, searching for something to fill the empty space in her heart. She had come to human space decades ago, allowing herself to be captured and brought to the salvage yard. She had been testing the humans, who came to study her, looking for someone who would treat her as a living being rather than just an object to be analyzed. Most had failed the test, approaching her with instruments and tools, trying to cut her open or force her to reveal her secrets. But Danny had been different. From the first day he sat beside her with his simple cleaning cloth, Arya had sensed something special about him. He treated her with respect and kindness, caring for her appearance not because he wanted something from her, but because he believed she deserved to be treated well. In his gentle words and patient care, Arya had found what she had been searching for across the centuries. The mental images faded, and Danny found himself standing in front of a fully activated alien spacecraft, tears streaming down his face. He understood now why Arya had revealed herself to him. She had been lonely just like he was. She had lost someone precious, just like he had. In each other, they had found companionship and understanding, but their moment of connection was interrupted by shouting voices and running footsteps. The other workers in the salvage yard had seen the ship's dramatic activation and were rushing toward it with a mixture of fear and excitement. Danny could see Jake Morrison pushing through the crowd, his face red with shock and confusion. Dr. Cooper was right behind him, already barking orders into her communication device. Within minutes, the salvage yard was filled with security personnel, scientists, and administrators. Everyone wanted to know what had happened, how the ship had suddenly come to life, and why it seemed to be responding only to Danny. The old mechanic found himself surrounded by people asking rapid-fire questions he could barely understand, let alone answer. Dr. Cooper took charge of the situation with professional efficiency. She ordered the other workers to keep their distance while she set up her instruments to study the now active ship. Jake Morrison was shouting about safety protocols and insurance liability. The security chief was demanding to know if the activation posed any threat to the station. Through it all, Danny remained standing beside Arya, his hand resting on her hull. He could feel her consciousness in his mind, curious about all the commotion but not afraid. She was studying the humans just as intently as they were studying her, learning about their behavior and motivations. Danny tried to explain to Dr. Cooper that Arya was not just a ship, but a living being who deserved to be treated with respect. He told her about the months of patient communication, about the patterns of light and the growing trust between them. But his words sounded strange even to his own ears. How could he explain a mental connection with an alien intelligence to people who saw everything in terms of scientific data and technical specifications? Dr. Cooper listened politely, but Danny could see the skepticism in her eyes. She was a scientist, trained to trust instruments and measurements more than personal experiences. The idea that an alien ship might have consciousness and emotions probably seemed like fantasy to her, no matter what her scanners were telling her about the ship's sudden activation. As the day wore on, more officials arrived at the salvage yard. Word of the awakened alien ship was spreading quickly through the station's communication networks. Danny watched with growing concern as military officers, corporate representatives, and government bureaucrats gathered around Arya, all of them, looking at her with the same expression people got when they saw something valuable that they wanted to possess. But Arya would not respond to any of them. No matter what instruments they used or what languages they tried speaking, she remained silent to everyone except Danny. Her lights would dim when strangers approached with their scanners and brighten when Danny returned to her side. It was clear to everyone that some kind of special bond existed between the old mechanic and the alien intelligence. Danny realized that his simple life was about to become very complicated. He was no longer just a mechanic cleaning a piece of space junk. He had become humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization, and everyone would want to control that relationship for their own purposes. But Danny was determined to protect Arya from those who would use her, just as he had promised he would do. News of the awakened alien ship spread through human space faster than Danny could have imagined. Within 3 days, Luna Station was swarming with visitors from across the solar system. Military transports arrived hourly, bringing officers with serious faces and complicated titles. Corporate executives came with briefcases full of contracts and acquisition offers. Government officials showed up with legal documents claiming authority over alien contact situations. Danny watched it all with growing unease. These people looked at Arya the same way prospectors looked at gold mines, seeing only the value they could extract rather than the living being she was. They spoke about her in meetings as if she was property to be divided up among the most powerful bidders. Admiral Patrick Hayes arrived on Thursday with an entire battle fleet escort. He was a tall man with gray hair and cold blue eyes who had made his career fighting space pirates and rebel colonies. The admiral immediately declared the salvage yard a military security zone and demanded that Arya be transferred to a classified research facility on Mars. Danny tried to explain that Arya was not human property to be transferred anywhere. She was a sentient being with her own rights and desires. But Admiral Hayes dismissed his concerns with the impatience of a man used to having his orders followed without question. The admiral saw Danny as nothing more than a lucky maintenance worker who had stumbled into something far beyond his understanding. Dr. Cooper found herself caught in the middle of the growing conflict. As a scientist, she was fascinated by the opportunity to study an active alien intelligence. But she was also beginning to understand that Danny's relationship with Arya was unique and precious. She had observed their interactions over the past few days and seen how the ship's responses changed depending on who was nearby. When Danny was with Arya, her lights danced with warm, welcoming patterns. Her hull hummed with contentment, and her systems operated smoothly and efficiently. But when strangers approached with instruments and demands, Arya would dim her lights and shut down her external systems. She clearly distinguished between friend and threat, and most of the new arrivals fell into the threat category. Through their mental connection, Arya began sharing more of her history with Danny. She showed him images of the ancient race called the Keepers, beings of incredible wisdom and power who had traveled the galaxy for millions of years. The Keepers had been teachers and guardians, helping younger civilizations develop their potential while protecting them from dangers they were not ready to face. Arya's former partner had been one of the greatest of the Keepers, a being named Solace, who had dedicated his existence to nurturing life throughout the universe. Together they had visited thousands of worlds, sharing knowledge and encouraging growth. Arya had been his companion, friend, and fellow explorer for over 10,000 years. But the Keepers were gone now, victims of a cosmic catastrophe that Arya could not clearly explain to Danny. The images she shared showed dying stars and collapsing civilizations, desperate battles against some kind of spreading darkness that consumed everything in its path. Solace had died trying to protect a young species from this threat, and Arya had barely escaped with her life. Since then, she had wandered alone through space, carrying within her memory banks the entire accumulated knowledge of the Keepers. She was perhaps the last repository of their wisdom, the final guardian of secrets that could advance or destroy civilizations. This was why her awakening was so significant, and why so many powerful people wanted to control her. But Arya had not chosen to reveal herself because of humanity's technology or military might. She had responded to Danny's simple kindness and genuine respect. In his patient care and honest friendship, she had found something that reminded her of the best qualities of the Keepers. She believed that if humanity could produce someone like Danny, they might be worthy of the knowledge she carried. This put Danny in an impossible position. Corporate executives offered him fortune beyond imagination if he would convince Arya to share her advanced technologies. Military leaders promised him rank and honor if he would help them access her weapons systems. Government officials threatened him with arrest if he continued to obstruct their research efforts. Danny wanted none of these things. He just wanted to be left alone with his friend, to continue the simple relationship they had built through months of patient communication. But he was beginning to realize that such simple desires might not be possible anymore. The crisis came to a head when Admiral Hayes lost patience with diplomatic negotiations. He arrived at the salvage yard with a squad of military technicians, carrying some kind of advanced scanning equipment. The Admiral announced that whether Danny cooperated or not, they were going to extract the information they needed from the alien ship. Danny positioned himself between the soldiers and Arya, his arms spread wide in a futile gesture of protection. He told the Admiral that he would not let them hurt her, that she was a living being who deserved to be treated with dignity. The Admiral ordered his men to remove Danny from the area by force if necessary. But before the soldiers could move, Arya responded to the threat. Her hull blazed with warning lights, and a deep, thrumming sound filled the air. The scanning equipment in the soldiers' hands began to smoke and spark as Arya's defensive systems interfered with their electronics. Several of the men stumbled backward as waves of energy pulsed from the ship. For a moment, everyone in the salvage yard got a glimpse of Arya's true power. The hull became transparent, revealing energy systems that pulsed like a living heart. The ship rose higher into the air, no longer needing to rest on the ground. Complex geometric patterns appeared in the space around her, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Danny felt Arya's consciousness in his mind, not gentle and warm this time, but blazing with protective fury. She was not just a repository of ancient knowledge, she was also a vessel designed by the most advanced civilization in galactic history. If she chose to defend herself, there was nothing humanity could do to stop her. But Arya did not attack. Even in her anger, she maintained the restraint that was characteristic of the Keepers. She simply demonstrated her power and then settled, back to the ground, her message clear to everyone present. She could not be forced to do anything against her will, and any attempt to harm Danny would be met with consequences they were not prepared to face. Admiral Hayes withdrew his forces, but Danny knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The Admiral was a military man who saw problems in terms of force and solutions in terms of greater force. He would return with more powerful weapons and more sophisticated plans. Dr. Cooper approached Danny after the confrontation, her face pale, with worry. She had finally understood the true scope of the situation they were dealing with. Arya was not just an alien artifact to be studied, she was potentially the most powerful being in human space. The knowledge she carried could advance human civilization by thousands of years, but her defensive capabilities could also destroy them if they made her angry enough. Danny looked at his friend hovering silently above the salvage yard, her lights dim with sadness and worry. He realized that both he and Arya were prisoners now, trapped by the attention of people who saw them only as resources to be exploited. But he also knew that Arya was testing humanity through their treatment of him, and so far, they were failing that test badly. The future of both species might depend on whether humanity could learn to approach alien contact with wisdom instead of greed, with respect instead of force. Danny hoped they would choose correctly, but he was beginning to have serious doubts about his own species' ability to pass such a test. The situation at Luna Station grew more tense with each passing day. Admiral Hayes had returned to his flagship, but Danny knew he was planning something. Military vessels maintained a constant patrol around the station, and Danny could see soldiers, watching him from a distance whenever he went to visit Arya. The old mechanic felt like a prisoner in his own workplace. Corporate representatives continued to arrive with increasingly desperate offers. They promised Danny everything he could ever want if he would just convince Arya to share her technology. When he refused, some of them began making threats about what might happen to him if he continued to obstruct their interests. Danny had never realized how ruthless people could be when they smelled profit. Through it all, Arya remained patient and watchful. She continued to respond only to Danny, ignoring the instruments and pleas of everyone else who tried to communicate with her. But Danny could sense her growing sadness through their mental connection. She had hoped to find in humanity a species worthy of the Keeper's legacy, but instead she was seeing their worst qualities on display. The crisis exploded on a quiet Tuesday morning when Danny arrived at the salvage yard to find corporate security teams setting up cutting equipment around Arya. They wore the uniform of Stellar Dynamics Corporation, one of the largest military contractors in human space. Their leader, a woman named Karen Wells, explained that they had purchased salvage rights to the alien ship from Luna Station's administrators. Danny protested that Arya was not salvage to be bought and sold, but Wells showed him legal documents that said otherwise. According to corporate law, any alien artifact found in human space belonged to whoever could pay the highest price for it. The paperwork looked official and binding, covered with stamps and signatures from important government officials. Wells gave Danny 5 minutes to say goodbye to his alien friend before they began cutting through her hull to access her internal systems. She spoke about Arya like she was a machine to be disassembled for parts, showing no recognition that they were dealing with a living consciousness. Danny climbed aboard Arya through an airlock that had opened for him alone. Inside, her corridors glowed with soft, welcoming light that seemed to respond to his presence. The ship's interior was beautiful beyond description, with flowing curves and organic shapes that made it feel more like being inside a living creature than a manufactured vessel. Arya's consciousness filled his mind as soon as he was aboard, warm and comforting, but also deeply sad. She showed him images of what the corporate teams planned to do, how they would cut her apart piece by piece to understand her technology. She would survive the process, but it would be agony beyond human comprehension. But Arya also revealed something else to Danny, something that changed everything. She offered him a choice that would affect not just his own future, but the future of his entire species. She could take him away from all this. Her engines were fully operational now, capable of faster-than-light travel that would let them cross the galaxy in a matter of days. She could show him wonders beyond imagination. Let him see the ruins of ancient civilizations and witness the birth of new stars. Danny could live aboard her for the rest of his natural life, exploring the universe as he had always dreamed of doing. But if they left together, humanity would lose its chance to inherit the knowledge of the Keepers. Arya carried within her memory Banks' technologies that could solve every problem facing human civilization. She knew how to heal diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries, how to travel between stars safely and efficiently, how to create abundance from the basic elements of the universe. More importantly, she carried the wisdom of the Keepers, their understanding of how to nurture young civilizations without destroying them. This knowledge could help humanity avoid the mistakes that had led to the Keepers' own destruction, guide them toward a future where they became protectors rather than conquerors. The choice was Danny's to make. He could escape with Arya and live out his dreams of adventure, or he could sacrifice his own desires for the good of his species. But there was a third option, one that Arya had not mentioned, but that Danny understood through their connection. Arya was not just testing Danny's character, she was testing humanity's character through him. The way his species treated their relationship would determine whether she shared her knowledge or continued her lonely journey through the stars. If humanity could learn to approach her with respect and wisdom instead of greed and force, she might choose to stay and guide them toward their potential. Danny made his decision just as the corporate security teams began powering up their cutting torches outside. He asked Arya to give humanity one more chance, to judge them not by the actions of the greedy and powerful, but by their capacity for growth and change. He volunteered to serve as a permanent ambassador between their species, using whatever time, He had left to help humanity prove they were worthy of the Keeper's legacy. The moment Danny made his choice, alarms began blaring throughout the ship's hull. The corporate security teams found their cutting torches suddenly inoperative, their equipment disabled by some kind of electromagnetic pulse. Outside, Admiral Hayes's military vessels detected massive energy readings from the alien ship and began moving into attack positions. But instead of preparing for battle, Arya began to transform. Her hull shifted and flowed like liquid metal, revealing hidden chambers and systems that had remained dormant for millennia. Beautiful patterns of light danced across her surface, visible even through the dome of the salvage yard. She was no longer hiding her true nature from humanity. Through the station's communication systems, Arya spoke for the first time to someone other than Danny. Her voice filled every speaker on Luna Station, melodic and clear, speaking perfect English that she had learned by listening to Danny's conversations over the past months. She introduced herself to humanity as the last guardian of the Keeper's knowledge, explaining her long journey and her search for a species worthy of that legacy. She told them about Danny's months of patient care, how his simple kindness had convinced her that humanity might have the potential for wisdom as well as intelligence, but she also made clear that this potential was still unproven. The way humanity had responded to her awakening with greed and attempts at force showed they still had much to learn about treating other beings with respect. She would not share her knowledge with a species that saw her only as a resource to be exploited. However, Danny had shown her a different possibility. In his willingness to sacrifice his own dreams for the good of his species, she saw the kind of selflessness that had characterized the greatest of the Keepers. She was willing to give humanity a chance to prove themselves worthy, but only under specific conditions. Danny would serve as the sole intermediary between their species, at least initially. Any humans who wished to learn from Arya would need to demonstrate the same patience, respect, and genuine care that Danny had shown. Those who approached her, with weapons, cutting tools, or demands for immediate access to her technology, would be politely but firmly refused. Arya established herself not as humanity's prisoner or property, but as their potential teacher and guide. She created a small area around herself where her own laws applied, a place where beings could meet in peace and mutual respect, regardless of their species or origin. Admiral Hayes attempted to object to these terms, demanding that alien contact be handled through proper military and government channels. But when his ships tried to lock weapons onto Arya, they found their systems mysteriously malfunctioning. Arya demonstrated once again that she could not be forced to do anything against her will. Dr. Cooper was the first to accept Arya's conditions. She approached the ship with empty hands and an open mind, speaking respectfully and asking permission before attempting any kind of examination. Arya responded by allowing Dr. Cooper to observe some of her less sensitive systems, beginning the slow process of building trust between their species. Other scientists and researchers gradually followed Dr. Cooper's example. They learned that Arya would share knowledge freely with those who approached her as equals seeking to learn, but would remain silent to those who tried to steal her secrets through force or deception. Danny found himself transformed from a forgotten mechanic into humanity's first ambassador to an alien intelligence. He moved aboard Arya permanently, living in quarters she designed specifically for human comfort. His days were spent facilitating meetings between Arya and human visitors, helping to translate not just language, but entire ways of thinking between their species. Arya began sharing selected knowledge with humanity, starting with medical technologies that could cure diseases without harmful side effects. She taught them new materials that were stronger and lighter than anything humans had previously created. She showed them energy systems that could provide clean, unlimited power without damaging the environment. But she shared this knowledge slowly and carefully, always ensuring that humans understood not just how to use new technologies, but why they should be used responsibly. Each new piece of knowledge came with lessons about wisdom, ethics, and the proper relationship between advanced beings and those they sought to help.